where people are making a short-term decision with long-term implications that they may not even know. And yes, we're going to do everything we can to make our buildings safe, but there are still too many unknowns with this. And the kind of politics around it all are very unfortunate to me, because I think we should just be realizing how hard it is to implement the guidance that's before us and basing our decision on that inevitability. And that's where I want us to just really be strategic about speaking truth to as many people as early as possible, so that they can at least plan for the best learning environment for our kids. And if that means digital learning, so that we can then have teachers do a streamlined thing that they all know what to do and kids get it, and then we can solve the other problems that are associated with that, which are making sure everybody has access to the internet, making sure everybody has a device through which they can connect. But I mean, I recognize that this is a complicated issue with a lot of different viewpoints, and I hear people. There have been many folks who have been texting throughout this meeting that I have not responded to, but I've seen them. And I empathize with folks who really want to return to school, because I would also love for that to be our reality.
Yeah, difficult decisions that have to be made. To Mr. Blair's point, nobody wanted or ordered up this pandemic, and certainly didn't think a couple of years ago running for school board that this would be the situation that we would be faced with. I want to just remind people there's risks on both sides. Director Redfield of the CDC said, as a public health leader and grandfather, I believe that having schools closed due to COVID-19 is a greater public health threat to children than having the schools reopen. We heard a speech yesterday at a chamber meeting. There have been more suicides among teenagers since the lockdown than COVID deaths among teenagers. Suicide's the second leading cause of death among our teenagers. If you think that there's only risk in our society due to COVID, it's not true. We've got to deal with the risk. And we've also got to deal with the fact that we have families that could potentially be decimated because of this. If we don't, we will not get our economy back to where it needs to be. And this is not money versus health, it's health versus health. And we have risks on both sides. And just so if anyone wonders whether I really care, I'm married to a GCPS teacher. My sister's a GCPS teacher. I've got a vested investment in GCPS. I believe our staff can make the accommodations necessary to handle the concerns of our teachers. If the numbers that were shared tonight are true, that 60% roughly are in person and 40% are roughly online, we have a lot of need for online teachers, which gives us the flexibility to try to take care of a number of the concerns that are being raised. I'm also looking at what the Academy of Pediatrics is saying, that our kids need to be in school, the American Psychology Association, that our kids need to be in school, and the fact that probably in my district, the people who have reached out to me are running 90% plus to get our kids back in school. That's why I supported that decision last week. That's where I stand today. I continue to appreciate anyone who takes the time to share with us where they stand, what they believe, what they feel about these issues that we are faced with. I pray for our community. I don't think it's a single issue decision. We have to make this decision holistically, and that's how I move forward.
Thank you, Mrs. Ratloff. Well, I know that I appreciate what Mr. Blair has had to say, and I certainly appreciate what Mr. Knudsen has had to say. But the remarks that I would like to address tonight, not to sidestep or not to overlook the importance of our discussion about in-person or online learning. But I'd like to talk to you, Dr. Welsh, and your remarkable report to us today as our Chief Equity Officer. I worked for 20 years, 3 years at Morris Brown College, and 17 years at Morehouse School of Medicine. I wouldn't have been in those environments without appreciating the great importance that you have reminded us of in your report on equity and compliance. I'd like to very, very much thank you for your report. Your report reminds us of the important work that has gone on here in Gwinnett County Public Schools over at least 10 years to embed equity in our school system. As you pointed out, the work includes the following. I've been here for most all, if not all of these. Our theory of action for change that links equity with all students achieving. The Human Resource Advisory Council, the community-based mentoring program, the Cultural Competence XFAT Teams work, the Southern Foundation Equity Project, the Wallace Foundation Equity-Centered Principal Pipeline, the 3Rs Project, and the Southern Education Foundation Equity Cohort. Each one of these building blocks to the point we are now at our public school system, very proud of the work with much more work to do. We appreciate your role, Dr. Welsh, in linking the work of the past to the needs of our school system in the future. We also look forward to your leadership in a school system where all are valued and all are welcome. Thank you so very, very much for your leadership. Thank you, Mr. Wilbanks. Thank you, Ms. Radloff.
Well, we are in a very difficult spot. We really are, all of us in this world together. This pandemic has put so much of a trauma on all of us in so many different ways. We're looking at values. We are reevaluating our lives, reevaluating what is important to us and why. And the fear and the angst and the terror that seems to be out there is very alarming to me. And over the last few weeks, or the last couple of weeks, I guess, when so many individuals have contacted me in many different ways, I have sensed that. And yet, safety is a tremendous concern for all of us, and it's one of our core values. Without a doubt, we insist upon that within our school. And yet, at the same time, our core business is teaching and learning. And I think about the children that we are endeared to and responsible for, and I really, really am worried about them and where they are going to go in the future. They rely on the schools, and I think about the little kindergartners. How is an online first school experience going to be in a digital learning environment for them? I know it will be wonderful, but for a little kindergartner, just starting out their whole career, is that what we really want for them? And yet we certainly want them to be safe. Life is so fragile, and what decisions are we making? We certainly value all of our teachers. Oh, golly, they are the key. They are the heart. They are what makes our whole system work the way it does. They are invaluable, and they are fearful right now. Fearful, and every single one of them who has contacted, probably all of us, they've all had a different story, and many of them are heartbreaking. And yet we hear again and again, they want to come back to the classroom. They want to come back to the classroom, and that's exactly where we want them to be. I'm really worried about the services that our children are not getting because they are not in school. And I think about the school experience that each one of them has is going to be if they are not in school. So I feel very strongly that we should go ahead and get back to school as quickly as we can and deal with the repercussions, perhaps. Obviously somebody may get sick. I mean, we may have to deal with that. But I feel very, very confident that our people are doing the best job that they can, and that safety measures will be taken into consideration in the best possible way that they can be. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Boyce. I could take bits and pieces of what each of my 4 board members have said, and it applies to my district. Yesterday afternoon, after I left the chamber meeting, I visited 2 apartment complex. One had 140 units in it, and one had a couple hundred units in. And a couple of the leaders from that community had asked me to come by to look and see and listen and hear. And I did. I spent a couple of hours over there. And it was interesting because the first thing they said to me, our kids have got to get back to school. They're so far behind even starting school. And then when the parents in the second language and the complex, as Mr. Blair had said, you know, the hot points of the virus in the county, I understand that. I get that. I talk to Dr. Rona daily on this topic. But clearly they said to me, we realize our teachers have concerns. We understand that. But if these kids do not get back to school and these families do not get the kind of support, going back to something that Mr. Knutson said about the depression and the suicide and the mental health issues and being behind in academics, it's going to develop into a much broader issues that we're going to have to deal with. I've listened to Dr. Patterson, I've listened to Mr. Wilbanks, and I've listened to Dr. Flynn, and I know the kind of work that they're doing on behalf of our teachers and our school system. And I have faith in this district. I do. I've seen where it's been, I see where it is, and I think I see where it's going. And because of that, we have a responsibility to stand behind our educators and to help them to the best of our ability and go ahead and educate our kids. That's all tonight. Mr. Wilbanks, do you have anything?
Ms. Redloff, I would just add to the context tonight. I think all of us know that these are very uncertain times, and we may make a decision tonight or move on what a decision has already been made, but we've got to be very much aware that conditions do change. And I would say if they do, we have to reevaluate and just make sure that we make the right decision. It's easy to make a decision. As a matter of fact, God knows I've made enough of them in my life. But you always want to make sure you're making the right decision. That's the decision you really need to make. And that's where we need to look at the things that we need to look at. Look at the data, look at all the other things. And what you all said tonight has been true. We do need to get kids back in school. But we also need to make sure that we do that in a safe and reliable way where they're safe. And I think that's something that we'll be, having to look at as we move forward. School starts in a little less than a month. And I think who knows what can change. And I think we just have to be smart enough to make sure that when things do change, make sure we reevaluate what's there to evaluate to make sure that we do indeed make the right decision.
Mr. Wilbanks, could you clarify your decision?
Pardon?
Could you clarify your decision for us just right now?
Can I clarify what?
Yeah, your recommendation for the school district right now.
Well, I had mentioned this afternoon that I felt a certain way. I don't know that it does me any good to do that at this point. We have to work together. We have to work as a team, and I will obviously always honor and do that.
Mr. Wilbanks, one thing I'd like to remind us all of, you have said, at least my understanding is all along the way, that we would look at the conditions at the time.
That's correct.
And I think that is the key point. We're looking at the Public Health Department, Georgia and Gwinnett. We're looking at the Georgia Department of Education. We're looking at, and we listed these in our most recent meeting, the many other leaders of organizations that have influenced our decision, but still it's not a static virus, and it's not within our power to have it be a static decision.
But the cases today are self-evident. I'm sorry. I've been trying to respect the authority of our collective and recognize the complexity of this issue. And I cannot understand how we can lead in the number of cases in this state and choose not to do something else right now.
Any other comment, ladies and gentlemen? Then we are adjourned. Thank you for coming, folks. I think that's yours.
It is.
I didn't see it.